A very good evening, everyone. Really pleasure to have you all here. I'm Edmund. I'm a third-year PPE student. I'm from Malaysia, and I'm one of the co-presidents for the Christian Union. The Christian Union is a place, is a community of Christian students who want to know Jesus and to make him known. But we're also a community that wants to engage with life's big questions, with leaders from all kinds of fields, questions that we all think and care about, and have a real and substantial dialogue about it. So, regardless of whether you're a Christian, you've been to CU for the past 2-3 years, you're very welcomed here. And if it's your first time here, and you never thought you'd be in a CU event, you are so welcome here. It's really glad to have you here. I thought I'll just introduce our speaker today. So our speaker today for this event, he has achieved it all. He is named Rothschild's Rainmaker by the Daily Telegraph, and he's one of the most successful investment bankers in the city. Akeel was born in Tanzania to Indian parents and was later sent to boarding school when he was 7 in the UK. He then went on to read law at a university that for many of us was our first option, including myself. And Akeel joined Rothschild after graduation, where he has been working for the past 36 years. He is now a partner in the firm and is the global head of consumer at Rothschild. Akeel has had a long list of illustrious clients such as Coca-Cola, Asahi, Ferrero, Lion Capital, Blackstone, and he's advised them on many multi-billion M&A transactions. He apparently lives in a small village called Perfect in Surrey with his wife and soulmate Joy, and they have 4 adult children together. It's a pleasure to have you here, Akeel.
Thank you, Edmund.
Just to start us off, you were born in Tanzania and you until the age of 7, and you moved to the UK. Do you mind sharing a bit? I mean, do you have any memories of growing up in Tanzania, and how was the transition like moving to the UK as a boy?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm of Indian origin, like many people from Tanzania, and my family had moved to what was then German East Africa. Or my grandfather did in the 20th century to make his fortune. I've seen my most enduring memories of Tanzania as a small boy was in a boarding school, because I was in a boarding school from the age of Jesuit boarding school from the age of 4.5 in the mountains, where we tried to pretend we were in a British boarding school in England. The weather was British, the staff were English and Irish monks. It was all curious. Even the cooking staff were English, so you might not have imagined if you didn't step out of the school that you weren't in England. Very curious place where we were in the 1970s, early 70s, late 60s, still working by a curriculum that hadn't changed much since the 19th century when it was first introduced. It's this type of school that was really geared towards English expats and has long since disappeared. That was my formative experience in East Africa, and then I went at the age of 7 from one boarding school to another boarding school in England, a school on the south coast called Brighton College, and it was a sort of, a little bit different. I found that actually they were so far behind the curriculum that I'd been studying in East Africa that I didn't do any work for the first couple of years. So that was my slightly atypical sort of start to academic life anyway.
And how was your family life kind of growing up then?
Well, I grew up in a nominally, I would say, Muslim family. There were more cultural Muslims than Muslims who particularly took their faith seriously, and I came from a business family where my grandfather had made a lot of money, so my father and his siblings didn't do much work really, if truth be told. So they enjoyed the good life, I'd say, and fortunately I had a mother who realized it was all going to run out, and so she ensured that we got a proper education, if nothing else.
That's fair enough. So you went to Oxford to do law. Why did you decide to do law, and how was your experience like at Oxford?
I had a fantastic time at Oxford. I chose law because there were a couple of people that I'd encountered who were lawyers, including an aunt of mine who was the first Asian woman to be called to the bar at Lincoln's Inn. So I used to have a huge admiration for her. And I thought the kind of skill set that I had would be well suited to law. But, these days, of course, people research their career choices very profoundly. But I think that certainly in my day, and maybe for many today, the choices that career choices that they make are based on pretty ill-informed choices. It's only when you get there that you find out what you're into. But my first, if you like, trauma when I arrived in Oxford was realizing that I'd chosen a subject where everyone had to work far harder than they did reading some other topics, and so I was resentful about the amount of work that I had to do of necessity, because with the law you either know it or you don't. You can't pretend you know what you don't know.
It's not like PPE, isn't it?
No comment. But no, I had a fantastic time, and I suppose looking back on it, I took the academic opportunity that was in front of me a little bit for granted, and would have no qualms about shamelessly reading back to the world's leading authority in whatever area of law I was studying in, who happened to be my tutor, a chapter from his own book as my week's essay, and doing it with a straight face. But then had to, like again some others, make up for 2.5 misspent years in my last term, where I had to sort of speed revise to make up for lost ground. So I'm not sure I'm a great advert.
Fair enough.
How you should go about doing things.
Fair enough. And you said about making lots of people make ill-informed career choices, and I think investment banking is definitely one of those where everyone has applied. Give me a raise of hands if you applied to some sort of investment banking application. No shame. It's fine. It's fine. It's all right.
Well, actually, that's surprisingly good, because I'm given to understand that with the sort of work-life balance preoccupation that everyone has, that people have become very allergic to careers in investment banking.
Not in LSE. That's why we have so many people here. But anyways,
so everyone off.
why did you decide to go into investment banking after having done law?
Well, I was being sort of channeled towards the bar, and I suppose I'd been in fairly rarefied academic institutions for most of my life until then, and I thought that somehow a career in banking would be sort of closer to the real world and more at the coalface of business than the law. So again, not a terribly sophisticated set of reasons, and the banks, like they do today, used to come and solicit you fairly aggressively. In those days it was easier because now, of course, all the top employers go to all of the leading universities, whereas in my day, actually, it was, for those who were not there, the unhappy situation where a lot of the top employers would only recruit at Oxford and Cambridge. So, if you could basically spell your name and sign your name at the bottom of a page once you were there, you would end up with several offers at the end of your time at university, which is far from the reality of today.
Several offers. Wow, what a concept. What a concept. And it's a very random question, but how do you think you would have ended up if you decided to be a lawyer? It's obviously a wild counterfactual. Right?
I don't know. I'm sure I would have been a good lawyer on the basis that a lot of my contemporaries obviously went on to the law, and I'm of an age now where they're QCs or High Court judges or whatever. But look, I mean, I think whatever career choice you make, there's no substitute for hard work. I mean, there are some people who sort of think, well, I'll find something where I don't have to work as hard and do as well. But I don't think any such job exists. Whether you want to be an outstanding pianist, an outstanding footballer, or an outstanding banker, I think you've got to put in the hours if you really want to excel at whatever you do.
Fair enough. So you joined Rothschild after graduation, and you've been working there for 36 years. I think for many of us, I think statistically, I think this generation is most likely to have done at least, which have 5 or 6 career switches, maybe more in their lifetime. And I think so that working for one firm, I think is something that's probably quite striking for us. Do you mind sharing a bit of why you chose Rothschild in the first place and why you stayed? Have you ever thought of leaving at any point and so on?
Yeah, look, I mean, certainly if somebody had told me at the start of my career that I would spend 36 years at Rothschild, I would have been horrified at the idea. I mean, you know, I would have thought it would show spectacular lack of imagination to spend 36 years in one firm. But, you know, why have I been there as long as that? Firstly, I think the values of the firm are ones that I'm very comfortable with. And from speaking anecdotally to friends and colleagues in the city, I know that's not a given, and so that's been an important reason why I felt very comfortable staying where I am. I've excelled where I am. You know, I've had the good fortune of being able to get further faster without having to maybe work quite as hard as some others. So you know, it's great if you can find yourself in a career where you can excel when you're working as hard as everyone else. You know, it can be very rewarding, and so I found myself a square peg in a square hole, as it were. And they've always just about made it worth my while. You know, I get at this point a huge amount of autonomy and freedom as long as I deliver the goods, as it were. And yes, I mean, I've had approaches from pretty well every investment bank on the street, and I've always you know, persuaded myself in the end that there's nothing that I can really do there that I can't accomplish at Rothschild's in terms of things that matter to me. And you know, I'm a known quantity where I am. And also, after a certain point, I suppose I've developed a sense of loyalty to the firm and to the people within it, which has also helped keep me where I am. But look, I think ultimately it's about the fact that the area of investment banking I'm in is one which is infinitely and continuously challenging. I mean, I am, with the stuff I'm doing now, as challenged as I was in my first year, whereas there's so many people who go into careers where after 5-10 years they're bored rigid by what they do because it's repetitive, but no two deals have really anything in common. They're always unpredictable, you know, and I'm always having to learn new things about new industries, about a new transaction context, regulatory context, which means the outworking of the deal has really very little in common other than generic learnings from what I've done previously, and that's probably what's kept me stimulated for as long as it has done and kept me going.
And since we're on the topic of like deals, I mean, you've worked on Akeel sent me a selected list of transactions, and the font was so small, I kid you not, it was probably font 4 or something with like 20 or 25, and there was a selection. You've obviously done a lot of deals in your life. What's a deal that you are most proud of?
I don't know that it would be one deal, but I enjoy working on transactions where I can feel I've been part of the journey in transforming the business from what it is today. And I suppose there are 3 good examples that I particularly appreciate about that. One is Asahi, where I first started working for Asahi in 2008, I think it was, when they were basically a Japanese-only brewer, albeit I think then they were the second largest Japanese brewer, and derived all their revenues and profits in Japan, and then helped them buy, actually it was the Schweppes business in Australia in 2008, and then do a whole succession of deals for them. I've been their banker ever since then, survived multiple changes in CEO, and now they have earned more of their profits outside Japan than they do in Japan, and is now the 3rd largest brewer in the world. And you know, it's fantastic to be part of that of the journey. Another is you know, I've done a lot of work in the Coke system, and I started work in 2010, I think it was, for a company that was a regional bottler in Catalonia worth a few hundred million, and I supported them in a whole series of consolidations, which has ended up with the family that controlled that Catalan bottler now owning a third of a company worth 30 billion, which is the largest Coke bottler in the world. So that's exciting to have been part of that journey. And another example, I suppose, would be I helped somebody buy, again, many years ago, a small regional ice cream business called Richmond Ice Cream in the UK. And again, through a whole series of deals and joint ventures, have gotten them to the place where they're now the second largest ice cream company in the world, behind Unilever, and not far off overtaking Unilever, actually, as the largest ice cream company in the world. And it's great to be part of that journey. I mean, lots of ups and downs and twists and turns along the way, but you really feel that you are part of creating something, and that's incredibly rewarding.
Great. And lots of you are very motivated to go back to investment banking applications after this, yeah? Anyways, so you're a Christian.
Yep.
What was the relationship? So you mentioned a little bit that you grew up in a nominally Muslim family. For yourself, was faith ever a feature in life growing up, and how did you become a Christian?
Yeah, I mean, not especially, I mean, I, like a lot of people, if somebody had asked me, I would have said, yeah, sure, I believe in God, but I wouldn't really have thought through the implications of it in a meaningful way. And I would be happy to live with this sort of cognitive dissonance where I kind of said I believe in God without really having thought through the implications of what that meant or why, and who God really was. And I was in this condition really until actually my penultimate term at Oxford, when I was taken to a evangelistic Christian talk, I suppose, with the benefit of hindsight. I was invited by a girl who I thought was asking me on a date, and
don't leave if you find yourself in a similar predicament.
And attractive blonde lady, and so I thought, what's not to like? Saturday evening she was asking me out, and it turned out she was taking me to an evangelistic talk, and I remember my overwhelming feeling at the time was, my goodness, have all these people got nothing better to do on a Saturday evening than be in this dreary sort of church hall? So, yeah, I remember. I don't even remember the content of the talk, other than the fact that the speaker came up to me afterwards and started, talking to me about, my faith, which was kind of not really there. So, but like all self-assured 21-year-olds, it didn't stop me holding forth with my views about whatever. And he invited me to come and meet him again, and I suppose what he did was, through a series of conversations, led me to the view that actually not believing in God required more faith than believing in God, in a way that I hadn't really ever thought about. That actually being an atheist was less plausible than believing there was a creator God, and from that, really thinking with him again over a whole series of weeks. Again, I mean, must have been compelled to this by God, because certainly not through my own efforts, because I remember trying to make up for not having done any work for the previous 2.5 years, and so the last thing I was doing was seeking out anyone or anything, but he led me to thinking about the claims of Jesus Christ and who he was, and what he'd said, and I guess I came to the view that it was difficult to persuade myself that this was anything other than God who'd entered his creation 2,000 years ago, and provided the means by which could be restored, be in a restored relationship with God. And so I made I committed my life to Jesus and became a Christian at a certain point in all of this, again in a matter of weeks, without really having thought through the implications of what it all would mean for my life and my family and anything really. I just sort of part of me was motivated by getting this evangelist off my back, I thought at the time. But you know, and that was over 35 years ago.
Wow. Do you want to play the next slide? Just one slide next, the Slido one. Yep. If you have any questions, we are using Slido at the moment, so you can scan the QR code and send questions in. We're going to have a time of audience Q&A in about 20 minutes time. So you can start sending questions in. There will be some time for you to think through questions as well. But yes, on that point, I mean, thinking through the implications, you come from a Muslim family.
Yeah.
How was your family's reaction when you became a Christian?
Look, it was not great in the way that I hadn't really anticipated, because I thought, well, look, it's not as if our family take our you know, Muslim faith terribly seriously. I mean, my father used to drink half a bottle of whiskey a day, and you know, never knowingly got his prayer mat out. So you know, I didn't really expect it would be as big a deal as it seemed to be, but they really saw it as a rejection of themselves and their culture, and so the initial reaction was very hostile and very aggressive. They didn't go quite as far as disowning me, but it was not great, and my relationship with my mother and father has kind of been challenging ever since, I guess. And I'm sure they thought initially that it would be a sort of, you know, passing phase. I don't know what I thought. I don't know what I thought, but it hasn't been, and I'm still a Christian, and very committed in my faith. And I think they've moved from outright hostility after 35 years to mild curiosity. Is the best I can say.
This is a very long phase in Akeel's life, really. One question, I mean, many of us here would probably not identify as a Christian, and we have all sorts of ideas of what a Christian is, you know, kind of like, people don't, it's probably a very ill-defined term. People don't really know what it means. It seems to have a lot of political meaning, maybe some kind of religious meaning. What does it mean to be a Christian for you?
Being a Christian, first and foremost, is to embrace Jesus Christ as my God and Savior, and the means by which, or the person through whom I've been reconciled to God. You know, I think we're all put on this earth to be in relationship with God. You know, God created us in His image, and He intended us to be in a relationship with Him. But that contract, if you like, was broken from the outset with what is biblically described as sin, but sin means rebellion against God. And ever since, man has basically chosen to, one way and another, make himself the God of his life, and think that there's nothing beyond our capacity to handle for ourselves, rather than acknowledge the sovereignty of God over our lives. And what I found really seductive about the Christian faith that I had not seen anywhere else was a faith that dealt with the human condition with where it was rather than ought to be, and where coming into a reconciled relationship with God didn't depend on what I could do for God, because there's nothing I can do for God that's going to be good enough for a perfect God, and depended on what God, of His own volition, out of His own love, had done for us to restore us into relationship with God, which is to send His Son Jesus Christ, who is God incarnate, as it were, God in human form, into the world to take the burden of our rebellion against Him on Himself, and the way we can be reconciled is to put our faith and trust in Jesus as the means by which we're reconciled. So coming to that understanding is the core of my faith. And you know, the great thing about it is that yes, absolutely, it's a faith position, but it's a faith, an evidence-based faith position, and one that stands up to scrutiny in the way that I did not find for myself that Islam stood up to that kind of scrutiny, or any other faith that I had fleetingly considered along the way.
That's really interesting. Actually, many LSE students were really surprised that we were having you here, an investment banker. In fact, someone posted this on Facebook on the confession page. Nothing quite captures the messed up LSE culture like LSE SU Christian Union, getting advice from an investment banker on how to lead a fulfilling life. It is some of the depravity of our age and our culture, isn't it? But it's actually very interesting, because thanks to this one post, and LSE Love is a confession page. So if in case you don't know, it's an online phenomenon where people send anonymous posts to say things that they would otherwise not say in public. And this one post got us 400 extra views for our event. So it was really, really good. No publicity is bad publicity. One question for you. I think lots of people think investment banking is driven by greed. There are lots and lots of people who, I mean, it's for lots of people, you know, like the main reason why they're applying is for the money. And after 2007, 2008, I guess lots of people think, you can't really be a Christian fully in an industry or a sector like that. So how have you find being an investment bank as a Christian in investment banking? How's that journey been like for you?
I mean, look, I've never found in my time as a banker that I've had to do anything that I feel uncomfortable with as a Christian, and I think that's maybe partly a reflection of the values of the firm that I work for. But I also think that people have a rather caricatured view of business and finance, and they think that everyone is a crook. But the reality is that business and finance only works and functions because most of the people, most of the time, operate with integrity. I mean, if everyone was dishonest, or even if most people were dishonest, I mean, the capitalist system just wouldn't sustain itself in reality. Particularly with the kind of investment banking work that I do, which is advising corporates, where I'm generally the confidant of the CEO on large-scale corporate acquisitions, mergers, capital raisings, restructurings, and so forth, where I think having integrity and being known as somebody who means what you say and say what you mean actually enhances the relationship of trust with my clients, and they all know I'm a Christian, and hasn't stood in my way at all.
Was it always like that during growing? Was it probably 35 years?
I think it's, to be honest, I think it's easier. I would say, in all candor, as a senior banker, because my career is not dependent on the people in the firm. It's dependent on my relationship with my clients, their commitment and loyalty to me, and so when I'm prepared to be bold and brave for my faith, there's a limit to the adverse consequences that can befall me in the workplace. And I have to say, as a junior Christian, to my shame, I was, or as a junior banker, I was more timid because I was constantly fearful that being prepared to make a stand for my faith would disadvantage my career, because people would think surely I'm a bit soft in the head if I really take all this stuff seriously. But that says something about the quality of my Christian faith and a lack of trust in God's providence. But I also take the view now that I need to be prepared to be bold about my faith in the workplace, because if I'm bold about it, it makes it so much easier for junior Christians in the workplace or junior bankers in the workplace to be prepared to be transparent about their faith. And one thing that I've done in our organisation is hijack the sort of whole balance and inclusion movement to make sure that as Christians we also can have a voice in the workplace as much as the LGBT group can have a voice in the workplace, that the sort of Black Lives Matter group can have a voice in the workplace, and.
Interesting. I think lots of us here, at this stage, it's application season now, all the rejection letters are rolling in. It'd be nice to have a collection of them. And I think lots of us would think of our self-worth as tied to, especially here in LSE, to what you achieve. Even when you describe yourself, right? You describe that I'm an LSE student, I'll be interning at JP Morgan or whatever it is. Lots of people tie our self-worth to what we've achieved, what we've done, who we know, who we love. And you're clearly a very, very well sought after investment banker. Almost every, as you say, almost every investment bank has come after you. Have you ever struggled with your own self-worth throughout this, or maybe now or in the past? And how has that journey been like for you as a Christian?
Well, look, I think that my success in the workplace I regard as incidental to who I am, to be honest, and what matters to me. And the extent that I've enjoyed success in the workplace, I really believe that it's been enabled by God for His purposes. I don't think it's a coincidence that I am where I am doing what I am doing if God hadn't purposed it. And so, I see my responsibility and role at work first and foremost to honour God in everything that I'm doing, and that He's placed me where He has done in the position that I'm in to honour Him, and that's my responsibility in the workplace. So it's not to say that I am embarrassed or ashamed by wealth and success. I think there's nothing to be embarrassed about being a diligent worker. In fact, God Himself was a worker, and we were made to work. But the difference between me as a Christian in the workplace and I guess a non-Christian in the workplace is that I regard my job first and foremost in the workplace as being to honour God, not my employer or my clients.
Okay.
And see everything through that lens.
Okay, that's interesting. Akeel, you've achieved so much. I think lots of people, at an end goal, you want to be a partner of a good firm, you want to have a nice family, nice house, lots of all these nice things, and you would probably look at that, and if you're left in a reputation for integrity in this industry, even better, right? Lots of people would look at you and be like, wow, that is the fulfilled life I want to live now. For you, where does your fulfillment come from? Where does your sense of true fulfillment, where does that come from?
Look, as I said already, I think my fulfillment really is in glorifying God through my work, and I think I glorify God first and foremost by making sure that, or doing everything in my power to make sure that the people that I'm around, that I encounter, and I encounter all sorts of extraordinary people in my work environment, one way or another get to hear the gospel, because at the end of the day, the gospel gives people the means of by which they can satisfy their greatest need at the end of the day, which is not to have a roof on their heads, to have enough food in their bellies, but to be in a relationship with God. And they can only get into a relationship with God, I believe, by hearing the good news about Jesus. So one way and another, I see my objective is to make sure that people do that. And for sure, in a setting like this, or amongst business people, amongst my work colleagues, I have the privilege of being in a place where I can get the attention of people in the way that a minister sitting in a church might not be able to procure, and I need to use that.
I see. I mean, since the topic of tonight is there more to life than this? And we're thinking about kind of, is this success and, getting the right partner and all these things was the be all and end all. You've lived, I think, for many people, an incredible life. But, as we think about is there more to life than this, I mean, is there more to life than life itself? All this is going to end one day. Once you retire, all these things will be forgotten. You too will pass away. How does that thought affect how you live right now?
Well, I think it affects me in the sense that I don't live for the present. Yes, I enjoy all the good things that this life has to offer, but I don't at the end of the day regard those as the objects of my worship in any way. I think I try to hold lightly to the things of this world and recognize this life and this world to be an interlude in eternity, and eternity is going to be about whether you're in a reconciled relationship with God or separated from God for eternity. I think we all owe it to ourselves, each one of us in this room. I think you can choose ultimately to reject the claims of Jesus, but I think you owe it to yourself to examine them, because it may just be true. And if it is true that God entered his creation 2,000 years ago and spoke to us very directly about what he expects of us and how to enter into a relationship with him, I think we need to at least be prepared to go and read what it is that he said to us and how he said it to us, and read the eyewitness accounts of his life on this earth, and then make up your minds about it. I mean, one of the things that I've always been puzzled about is that people in an environment like this who are incredibly inquisitive about all aspects of their life can be so uninquisitive. I mean, I remember reflecting on this even at university about the most important question in life at the end of the day is whether God exists or not, and if he does exist, how has he manifested himself to us?
Yeah. It's really interesting, and you certainly don't hear that a lot here. To wrap things up for us, Akeel, if someone were to ask you, is there more to life than this? What would you say?
I would probably quote to them the words of Jesus, actually, and there are lots of things that Jesus has said, but the one that I particularly would draw their attention to were Jesus' words in the Gospel of Mark, where he says, "If anyone would come after me, let him deny himself and take up his cross and follow me. For whoever who would save his life will lose it, but whoever loses his life for my sake and the gospel's will save it. For what does it profit a man to gain the whole world and forfeit his soul?" And I think that really sums up what God's call to each of us really is about.
And with that, thank you very much. Can you guys give a round of applause? All right. Do you mind going back to the slide, please? Yep, great. So you can send me your questions. We're going to have like 5 minutes to chat to people around you, but what does a fulfilling life look like? If your neighbor doesn't look like they want to chat, slowly nudge them a little bit. So we're going to have 5 minutes break, and then we'll come back for questions. Exactly what's like when I was like, check them out. Hi guys. Hello. Good luck. Hi everyone. Great. We've got a great list of questions coming up for Akeel. So Akeel, you've got some accomplishments that we aspire to have, an incredibly strong career, family, achievement attached to your name. Why do you still need God? Is it kind of like a rich person's kind of pastime that you do, that you dabble in Scotting? Like, why do you still need God?
Because at the end of the day, I believe the only thing that is of any enduring value is a relationship with God. But recognizing I need God and being reconciled to Him are two different things, of course. And what's extraordinary about God, which only studying Scripture has revealed to me, is that, as I said earlier, being reconciled to God depends not on what we can do for Him, but what He has done for us. Because I think most of us, most of the time, and certainly it was the case for me before I became a Christian, was that if there was a God there, my relationship or right standing with Him depended on what I did rather than what He did for me. That was what was probably more revolutionary than any other aspect of my understanding of the Christian faith. And what, by the way, I think differentiates the Christian understanding of God's plan and purposes from any other religion.
Interesting. So, okay, you seem like a very, just reading up, you seem like a very intelligent person and critical thinker. How can you really be confident that the Bible is true? This whole wow story of this God and coming to the world and Christmas and stuff like that.
Simply because it's withstood the test of time in terms of every effort to undermine its historical authenticity. I mean, at every level, when people have sought to, just looking at the gospel accounts, which were put in writing starting sort of 30, 40 years after the death of Christ, but because there was an oral tradition which meant that they were passed on pretty authentically. But if you do research on place names in first century Palestine, you find that there's an exact match between the frequency of people's names, between the names of the characters in the gospel accounts and the people names that were common in that particular period of time. Geographic locations are exactly replicated by the reality of what we've only discovered recently to be the sort of, if you like, geographic detail of what was where, when, and distances traveling from one place to another. I mean, it wouldn't have been possible for even the most gifted fictional writer to have written with the historical authenticity that we see in the gospel accounts. So look, I mean, most that we take to be history, including the fact that Julius Caesar invaded Britain in 55 BC, is less authenticated in documentary terms than the Bible accounts. And I think what I would say to everyone, like I said just now, is rather than dismissing it without ever having opened it, actually go away and read a gospel account for yourself and ask yourself the question critically: do I believe this is true, or do I believe it's nonsense?
That's very helpful. Akeel, you've clearly make a lot of money. If in fact, there was a eFinancial Careers article talking about how nice it was to be Akeel Sachak because the payments are really good, and apparently there are butlers at Rothschild. Is that true? You get access to the company butlers? Possibly. Okay. All right. Confidential information. But how do you justify the accumulation of so much money and resources as a Christian?
Look, I think it places a big responsibility on your shoulders, and I regard everything that I have as God's resources, for which I'm a steward, and I need to be accountable to God for how I deploy them, and I have the privilege of being able to therefore get behind all sorts of ministries around the world, and I try to focus on what I call strategic ministries that proclaim, if you like, the gospel, because I believe at the end of the day that's the most strategic thing I can put my money behind, because there are lots of non-Christians who will put their money behind social welfare ministry, but only a Christian who really takes the Bible seriously is going to put his money behind the proclamation of the gospel, which also addresses people's most fundamental needs. So what I try and do in different ways in different parts of the world is put my resources to work in that way, and I believe that's why God's placed me where He's done, in order to enable me to do that. I mean, I don't candidly need to work, obviously at this stage of my career, to feed my family.
Interesting. I'm just gonna skip the popularity bit. And there was a very interesting question. You're a self-made man and have worked really hard for your achievements. Why do you, or I guess any one of us who works really hard, owe God anything? Why do you say your job is to honor God instead?
I owe God everything, I guess. We all owe God everything, because we wouldn't be where we are. We wouldn't be here without God. God made us in His own image. He created the world, and He will come one day. And some of you may regard this as a fantasy, but I regard it as absolutely true, that He will come one day to judge the world, and on that day, the only way, in my understanding from Scripture, that we won't be condemned is if we can rely on Jesus.
Interesting.
That's what I live for, to be reconciled to Jesus, and happily. And I having put my faith and trust in Jesus, I have the assurance of knowing where I'm going to end up in eternity. I mean, it would be a pretty daft thing to do, to think about things in the way that I'm talking about, if we believe this life was all there was. Rationally, if you believe this life is all there is, then absolutely you should indulge as much as you can and disregard anything else. So at the end of the day, how you live your life in this world, I think, is absolutely determined by whether you believe you're accountable to God.
Right. Just one question, just to shift gears a bit. This is a very interesting one. To what extent do your long-time clients, you've mentioned a few, have relationships with you personally versus relationships with your firm, and how does the two interact?
Look, I think it becomes blurred for them. I mean, at the end of the day, I think they're personal relationships, and if I went to another first-tier investment bank, maybe they would come with me. But look, I think the people that work for me in my firm are culture carriers of the sort of values that our firm espouses to, and the deals that I work on are by no means one-man deals. I mean, I may be the guy who's leading the deal, but I'll have 25 other bankers, depending on how big and complex it is, working with me, and it's very much a team effort. But yeah, look, there's no doubt that I'm seen as the key person by the client, and it's a onerous responsibility to them.
I see. A couple of questions along this line. I mean, how do you stay true to your Christian beliefs in, I guess, a workplace or a culture that probably doesn't prioritize the things that you care about as much? How have you found that to be like?
Look, it's not been easy. At times I've encountered all sorts of obstacles in terms of making my Christian faith visible in the workplace and ensuring that Christian values and a Christian worldview gets a proper hearing in the workplace. but I'm happily in a position where my seniority in the firm allows me to get away with stuff that I wouldn't otherwise get away with. And I think I need to be prepared to step up in that situation.
Fair enough. One question, maybe, so we're kind of running out of time. One question. In one sentence, who is Jesus Christ to you?
Lord of all.
What do you mean by that?
He is God who came to earth to bring us into a relationship with God the Father for eternity.
That's good. Let's give a round of applause for Akeel Sachak. Now,